All right, all right, all right. Peace, people, peace, peace, peace. Resistance, resistance, resistance. Right? Like I told you, when I started this, it took a while, right? Because I was sitting in my brain trying to figure out how do you approach telling people what's going on, right? Without just picking up like in the middle somewhere and trying to explain it while you have thousands of people putting out videos, but they just always repeating the same thing. And so when you tell them the behind the scenes or what that stuff means, you sound crazy because nobody never heard it before, right? So what I needed to do was design a way where I could say something. And I gotta change this opener as well. I'll do it in a second. Where I could say something to you, right? And it would make sense, right? So pardon me, I'm here cutting this out so y'all won't see that there at the bottom, right? So how would I be able to make that make sense? So what I did was give you the pieces first. I'm still giving you pieces, right? As far as the Druze, the Jesus being Julius Caesar, the working tools of a Freemason. Basically, these histories are all connected. The Scottish Rite, the York Rite, which I haven't got into because really, if you understand the Scottish Rite, then the York Rite should start making sense. But I'm gonna do it anyway. Don't think that I'm not. It's just that I'd rather go for the big pieces, and from that you can just deduce, what's happening. So I feel like I made it to the point now that I can be up to date, meaning that I'll start taking shows, movies, music, and explain that. Be able to lay that out to you, and you should be able to see it because I'm also taking the old information and including it with it. So on this, I'm gonna be breaking down, Scarface, the movie Scarface, and I'm gonna be breaking down The Sopranos. Right, I mean, so many different shows and stuff. So with this, I'm gonna be showing you how hypnotism works through entertainment. Right, so I'm sitting here thinking of a title, for this. So I'm not gonna say, exactly, but basically, we will be addressing, TV, movies, and music, right? As this whole section of, how they trick the people, how they manipulate them through suggestion, right? And through these different avenues of entertainment, should we say, because we dealt with Neymar, we dealt with her brother Tubal Cain and Jabal and Jabal, like we, as far as music is concerned. Now I haven't taken the time, well, when I mentioned the Druze, a lot of that stuff came up as well. So if you go through the Druze, you'll see it. And I will be, like I said, from this point on, always using these references to explain. So in this, we're, going to use hypnosis to explain how you become entranced or, in a trance and hypnotized, and through that these messages are given to you and to other people to where it becomes the norm, right? So let me just change this up real here. Putting in, the first section, induction, right? Copy this, change the header. That's the headline. So now we'll put this here. Induction, right? And let's change this. Copy. All right. And paste that in there. So, right, this is just the induction part. Right, so we'll be going through it. Let me change my screen here to go into the desktop. Right. So you see up on top there, induction. All right. So hold on. Let the lady do her reading.
Hypnosis is normally preceded by a hypnotic induction technique. Traditionally, this was interpreted as a method of putting the subject into a hypnotic trance. However, subsequent non-state theorists have viewed it differently, seeing it as a means of heightening client expectation, defining their role, focusing attention, etc. The induction techniques and methods are dependent on the depth of hypnosis trance level, and for each stage of trance, that in some sources ranges from 30 stages to 50 stages, there are different type of inductions.
Now, right, I just like to stop every once in a while, right? Hypnotic induction techniques. So as you clearly stated, it's putting you in this trance, hypnotic trance, right? Define their role as focus attention. So as you were watching TV, you were being inducted into the frame. You were already set up. Oh yeah, I gotta see this. Your attention is already geared. Now, whether it be through your personal interests, right? So if you went into the guns and all of that, that's why, a lot of times you'll see, those who was watching the gangster movies, they weren't watching the rules. They wasn't watching how, say, there's always a Tony, right? So say Sal or Tony or Frankie or one of them comes out, Goodfellas, I forgot his name, Saul, right? Whatever, comes out, and you see all of them playing around, but when he comes out, they tapping each other, and they're basically like, be on point, like stop playing around. So with that, all they saw was the violence, and that was all that was promoted when you listen to hip hop, because especially hip hop is metaphors and phrases. So they're using these outside connections into their rhymes. So, like Paulie and Goodfellas, and these rhymes are using the parts to induce a thought into your brain, right? So this is where the induction part comes in, and then they tell you, excuse me, right? The induction technique is a method, and techniques and methods are dependent on the depth of hypnosis trance levels, and for each stage of trance, that in some sources range from 30 stages to 50 stages. There's different types of induction, right? I think I'll make this larger for some reason. I don't know. It just feels small. Oh, what am I doing? Nah, I'll just keep it like this. Hold on. Let me see here. Let me make sure y'all can see it on the screen. All right, okay. So, all right, I still feel it's small, so I'll probably fix it later. Anyway, so where we at? Okay, types of induction. There are
There are several different induction techniques. One of the most influential methods was Braid's eye fixation technique, also known as Braidism. Many variations of the eye fixation approach exist,
right. So as you hear him saying, there are many versions of the eye fixation technique. Pay attention. We will be getting to this in a second. The reason why I'm highlighting this is so you can be on point to the sections of what is being said.
including the induction used in the Stanford Hypnotic Susceptibility Scale, SHSS, the most widely used research tool in the field of hypnotism. Braid's original description of his induction is as follows. Take any bright object, e.g. a lancet case, between the thumb and fore and middle fingers of the left hand, hold it from about 8 to 15 inches from the eyes, at such position above the forehead as may be necessary to produce the greatest possible strain upon the eyes and eyelid.
Right? So it's saying now, remember, there's different techniques. So, what they're trying to produce is what? The greater possible strain upon the eyes and eyelids. Right?
To produce the greatest possible strain upon the eyes and eyelids, and enable the patient to maintain a steady fixed stare at the object.
Right? And what? The patient, enable the patient to maintain a steady fixed stare at the object. In this case, right, it would be TV or, the movie screen, right?
The patient must be made to understand that he is to keep the eyes steadily fixed on the object, and the mind riveted on the idea of that one object.
When we think about watching a show, like you don't want to miss nothing, especially back in the days. Right? Back in the days, if you missed it, you were screwed. And two, that show was on a repeat, right? Because then you got to let other people tell you what happened because you're like, damn, I missed it. So keep this in mind, right?
It will be observed that owing to the consensual adjustment of the eyes, the pupils will be at first contracted, they will shortly begin to dilate, and, after they have done so to a considerable extent, and have assumed a wavy motion, if the fore and middle fingers of the right hand, extended and a little separated, are carried from the object toward the eyes, most probably the eyelids will close involuntarily, with a vibratory motion. If this is not the case, or the patient allows the eyeballs to move, desire him to begin anew, giving him to understand that he is to allow the eyelids to close when the fingers are again carried towards the eyes, but that the eyeballs must be kept fixed, in the same position, and the mind riveted to the one idea of the object held above the eyes. In general, it will be found that the eyelids close with a vibratory motion, or become spasmodically closed. Braid later acknowledged that the hypnotic induction technique was not necessary in every case, and subsequent researchers have generally found that on average it contributes less than previously expected to the effect of hypnotic suggestions.
Right. So he acknowledged that because remember, Braid came into this with explaining how mesmerism wasn't real. There was no such thing as animal mesmerism, but he did acknowledge pieces of it, right? And that's how, hypnotism came about. So now, as he's doing his research, he later acknowledges that hypnotic induction techniques was not necessary in every case. And subsequently, researchers have generally found that on average, it contributes less than previously expected to the effect of hypnotic suggestion. So, meaning that you can hypnotize somebody without having to go through all of those means. You can simply, well, we'll get into, well, I'll let it explain inside the green, right?
Variations and alternatives to the original hypnotic induction techniques were subsequently developed. However, this method is still considered authoritative. In 1941, Robert White wrote, "It can be safely stated that 9 out of 10 hypnotic techniques call for reclining posture, muscular relaxation, and optical fixation followed by eye closure."
Right? So here's the point. Variations and alternatives to the original hypnotic induction techniques were subsequently developed. So they were working on different ways to make this happen because the end goal is to mass hypnotize, right? So they do say that, that's still basically considered the authoritative, fashion, right? Now, Robert White wrote, "It can be safely stated that 9 out of 10 hypnotic techniques call for reclining posture, muscular relaxation, and optical fixation followed by eye closure." Meaning, you come home, right? Long day, you want to watch some TV before you go to sleep. You're going to be reclined. Your TV most likely will be at a higher level, right, than your eyes, right? So then you have your eye fixation, on it, and then followed by eye closure. So this is why I tell people, do not watch TV, 1, laying down. 2, do not watch TV in the dark, right? Because of the flickering and all. We get into that, right? So you don't want to do these things because you'll be relaxed, your eyes will be focused upon it, and then you will go to sleep and the message will stay in your subconscious trying to make it make sense. Pardon me. Right? I'm wondering why is this alarm here? Alright, is that on my camera or something? It's like a line. Oh, for me, I'm looking at a line there, so it's like a line right about here and shit. Alright, so anyway, so this is what you want to be aware of. You do not want to watch TV or movies at home, especially in this position, because, like I said, your subconscious will try to make sense. While then you will come across people who watched it, and then come the influence and the suggestions become more intense, right? So we're going to go first into Scarface, right? Let me move to the side here. Right? And you see the grand hail sign, right? Now, if you remember the movie Scarface, right? Let me move this over here like this. If you remember the movie Scarface, right? This was him giving Tony this props, right? Oh yeah, you know what I mean? So psychologically, people gathered and they gravitated towards Tony Montana, right? Like he was this, stand-up guy. He was really a fucking idiot, right? But and from that, all of these morals and principles of street dudes came about, right? They took on this persona of Tony Montana, even down to the sniffing the coke, to all of these things were subliminally placed inside you through suggestion, right? And then it was the constant repeating of this through movies, references. It became the staple of street dudes, right? There was even in with a 50 Cent, he had a song of Ghetto Quran. Now in Ghetto Quran, there was a dude named Montana, like Tony Montana, was a real dude, right? And when he got busted, I believe there was like in every room there was like a VCR, and like that movie was like in it, or was it the Pictures? Right, it could have been inside the Pictures, like in every room it was either Pictures or it was that movie. I believe it was the movie with the VCR. Nonetheless, this was to show the impact, right? To promote this. Now, when you look at movies and TV shows, it's a whole different messaging system going on, right? So, we come back up when we come up here, right? And again, we remember when I told you about the Druze, right? So let me zoom in, right? As you can see right here, right? You can see right there, right? You see, the Jewish symbol. So the whole time, Frank is a Jew, right? Again, and you see the same Masonic hand sign, and shake, which they tell you, is, the Freemasonic symbol. All right, let me bring this down back some more, right? So, now we got that. So now inside of this, I'm explaining to you how they took a movie, right? Promoted it to the people. And in that promotion, we have suggestion, right? So the suggestions were inside of the movie, and it became quote unquote a what? Cult. Classic. Cult. Classic. Keyword is cult in that, right? So then these were the ways that they use to get you into this mindset. You understand what I'm saying? This is how they use this system. And to prove it, we're going to go once again. Now we're down into suggestion, right?
When James Braid first described hypnotism, he did not use the term suggestion, but referred instead to the act of focusing the conscious mind of the subject upon a single dominant idea. Braid's main therapeutic strategy involved stimulating or reducing physiological functioning in different regions of the body. In his later works, however, Braid placed increasing emphasis upon the use of a variety of different verbal and nonverbal forms of suggestion, including the use of waking suggestion and self-hypnosis. Subsequently, Hippolyte Bernheim shifted the emphasis from the physical state of hypnosis onto the psychological process of verbal suggestion.
All right, so let's go here. It says the conscious mind of subjection upon a single dominant idea. right? So when, like I said, when we think about the movie and we separate ourselves from the movie, and then we look at all of the promotion of the movie. All of that promotion is the suggestion. So by the time you realize that, you have been indoctrinated into this, you done lost so many people. That's why I said even when I was in, my hustle lifestyle, I wasn't buying into the suggestion. Now, as a means of survival, yeah, sure, I took on that, but I wasn't. There's a difference between surviving and trying to live fat off the hog. Right, because with that there's other suggestions. There's like, even when we think about Boys and not Boys and Hood, Minister Society, when Kane was robbing the dude in the car, right? He's trying to talk positive, and it's, man, get out of here with that black, that, oh, you smart now, you understand what I'm saying, approach, which seemed to be a counter to Boys in the Hoods, furious, talking to the neighborhood and offering that information, because it gave an opportunity for the smart people to be smart, where, yeah, you might be scared of these dudes in these neighborhood, but they would listen. By the time Minister Society was promoting was, now don't listen to none of that, just be savage, right? So let me bring this over here, right? So then it goes, right? In his later works, however, Braid placed increasing emphasis upon the use of a variety of different verbal and non-verbal forms of suggestion. Right, so there's verbal forms and then there's non-verbal forms, including the use of waking suggestion, right? Meaning that you've been placed in this watching the movie or whatever, and then when you around certain people, that suggestion opens. I remember being incarcerated, and I'm telling somebody, like, they was talking about strip clubs, and now me, if you know me, I'm not really into the strip club scene, right? And he was like, "Oh, you must have not been getting no money. Everybody knows when you're getting money, you go to the strip club." His suggestion is that, or his train of thought was based on those suggestions, that when you get money, you take it and you put it over here into things that are productive to you. You risk your life for, money, and here it is, you turn around and you give it away to somebody else because that's what you are supposed to do. Right? And so that's the waking suggestion. Then you have hypnosis subsequently, right? Shifted the emphasis on physical state of hypnosis on a psychological process of verbal suggestion, right? So here we go into verbal suggestion.
I define hypnotism as the induction of a peculiar psychical, i.e., mental, condition which increases the susceptibility to suggestion. Often, it is true, the hypnotic sleep that may be induced facilitates suggestion, but it is not the necessary preliminary. It is suggestion that rules hypnotism.
It is suggestion that rules hypnotism. So if you can get the masses to feed into the suggestion, then they all go into a fashion. That's why when you look at black exploitation, which is everything. I don't just call it films, TV shows, and all of that. These suggestions are repeated, right? It is suggestion that rules hypnotism. So you are more controlled through peer pressure and the influence that, remember, you have junior masons, you have all of these, different schools and whatnot, to where they are given this information even at a young age. So it's passed through these people through other elements. You understand what I'm saying? Through the outside influence that's holding control of the masses. So you put these little pieces, right? These little voices who's spitting the same thing. And as they say in the same thing, it becomes reality. You put up these gangs and these crews, and you use these suggestions amongst them to have these outcomes, violence or black on black, as you say, and the constant confusion. And, because, if that was me, I would have. Suggestion. Oh, you tripping, son, because if that was me. And then others observe the dubious actions of that, and then they take part in it. That's why, I know in New York, penitentiaries, a lot of people were getting, cut and all that, mainly due to the fact of that technique. Oh man, yeah, word. Oh, you get busy, you'll go, you know what I mean? And like I said, some is direct and some is indirect suggestion, right?
Bernheim's conception of the primacy of verbal suggestion in hypnotism dominated the subject throughout the 20th century, leading some authorities to declare him the father of modern hypnotism. Contemporary hypnotism uses a variety of suggestion forms including direct verbal suggestions, indirect verbal suggestions such as requests or insinuations, metaphors and other rhetorical figures of speech, and nonverbal suggestion in the form of mental imagery, voice tonality, and physical manipulation.
Right. So, as you see, right, we have contemporary hypnotism uses a variety of suggestion forms, including direct verbal suggestion. Yo, you should do this, right? Indirect, which is the form and which I'm gonna get to in here, is through the movies and whatnot, where it's said there, but it's not directly implied, right? Verbal suggestions such as request and insinuation, metaphors, and rhetorical figures of speech. Right? So metaphors through, like I said, we think about hip hop and the music. What is it? It is, when the best lyricists, spit metaphors. Right? So in other rhetorical figures of speech and nonverbal suggestion in the form of what? Mental imagery. Right? Meaning that, like the color book meme guys, I call them, memeologists, like the people with the memes, and they use these two pictures, right? And then you're supposed to, imagine it, but also within the rhyme or whatnot, where you can close your eyes and visualize what's being said. Forgive me, guess I'm dark, so I got the I thought I had the light, but I guess the green is reflecting and is making me see through. Anyway, right? Nonverbal suggestion in the form of mental imagery, right? Voice totality and physical manipulation. Like I said, so you have these groups that's set up, and they go out there and you better do this. So the manipulation is a part, like I said, you have these three avenues of getting the message out, the music, right? And the best lyricists can paint a picture through their storytelling paralysis, right? Then you have like I said, within what else we have here? We have verbal suggestions such as request and insinuation. So all of these are the on-hand manipulative tactics, right? A distinction is commonly
A distinction
made.
is commonly made between suggestions delivered permissively and those delivered in a more authoritarian manner. Harvard hypnotherapist Deirdre Barrett writes that most modern research suggestions are designed to bring about immediate responses, whereas hypnotherapeutic suggestions are usually post-hypnotic ones that are intended to trigger responses affecting behavior for periods ranging from days to a lifetime in duration.
So, especially through the movie industry, right? You had which would be long term. And these coats, these are long term, where once you have been indoctrinated into it, that's it, right? They have, ranging from days, right? Ranging from days to a lifetime in duration. So you can see certain things, and it's supposed to trigger you either immediately because the suggestion was put out there, like TV shows or whatever, and then certain things could be placed in your personal circumference. Like say if you're looking at, an urban show, and then there's certain things that you see, you got to remember they are, the writers are putting things that are common for you. So then these are the suggestive ways that you are supposed to handle it. If you don't believe me, just look at the old shows and you think about the incidents at those times, and you will see a strong connection.
The hypnotherapeutic ones are often repeated in multiple sessions before they achieve peak effectiveness.
Right? So when you're looking at TV shows, these are multiple sessions. You're coming back every week at a certain time to get your dose, to achieve its peak of effectiveness. Now, the thing is, most people do not realize most of their shows always have this suggestion in it because it's the multiple doses. So you could be watching from SpongeBob to I don't know, like, let me think of, like Terminator or something like that. And the same suggestion would be in them, even though they total opposites, in approaches, like comedy to, sci-fi drama or whatever. The suggestion is still planted within those two shows. Right? So then we got, let me make this change. And I've been neglecting this part. Right. Let me go here. I'm just copying a little something just so, I'm thinking about, also, adding the timestamps to it. So I think this would be easier for me if I do it that way. All right, so I'll know when to do the timestamping. So anyway, some hypnosis view suggestion as a form
Some
of
hypnotists view
communication.
suggestion as a form of communication that is directed primarily to the subject's conscious mind, whereas others view it as a means of communicating with the unconscious or subconscious mind. These concepts were introduced into hypnotism at the end of the 19th century by Sigmund Freud and Pierre Janet.
I'm going to get into the Sigmund Freud aspects because I would say the last 20 years, the 20 years up to, let's say, probably about like 5 years ago. So 25 years ago, take the 20 years of that 25 years, and Sigmund Freud's approach is very significant in the formation of how you see our society today, especially within the black community, strangely, right?
Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory describes conscious thoughts as being at the surface of the mind and unconscious processes as being deeper in the mind. Braid, Bernheim, and other Victorian pioneers of hypnotism did not refer to the unconscious mind, but saw hypnotic suggestions as being addressed to the subject's conscious mind. Indeed, Braid actually defines hypnotism as focused, conscious, attention upon a dominant idea or suggestion.
Right, so it says focus, conscious, attention upon a dominant idea or suggestion. So when we're watching these shows, there's a dominant idea that's being promoted through them as a whole. You know what I'm saying? So there's a connection of the suggestion. That's how it works, because it has to be, bombarded, beat over the head, like we show in the picture of Hiram. So you get in this constant bombardment of information. But while the same information is being promoted to you, it's beating you in the head with it. You can't even escape it.
Different views regarding the nature of the mind have led to different conceptions of suggestion. Hypnotists who believe that responses are mediated primarily by an unconscious mind, like Milton Erickson, make use of indirect suggestions such as metaphors or stories whose intended meaning may be concealed from the subject's conscious mind.
Now, did you hear that? It says, right, Milton Erickson makes use of indirect suggestion. He's making use of this already, right? Such as metaphors or stories whose intended meanings may be concealed from the subject's conscious mind, because they're so busy watching these shows. They do not realize that there is a universal suggestion that's being passed around, right? The concept, let me up my phone, here we go.
The concept of subliminal suggestion depends upon this view of the mind. By contrast, hypnotists who believe that responses to suggestion are primarily mediated by the conscious mind, such as Theodore Barber and Nicholas Spanos, have tended to make more use of direct verbal suggestions and instructions. Ideodynamic reflex. The first neuropsychological theory of hypnotic suggestion was introduced early by James Braid, who adopted his friend and colleague William Carpenter's theory of the ideomotor reflex response to account for the phenomenon of hypnotism.
Right now, we're going to get into this. Well, let me just, because this is when you're looking at Scarface, right? You see him, the hell sign, and these arm reflexes, these bodily motions are to trigger certain things in your mind because you see them in different lights, right? So say you're looking at one movie, right? And you could see the same thing. And the words won't have to be the same, but the subject will be. So if you giving props to this person over here in this way, even in this over here, you would still be given the same message. So the mind will, subconsciously connect the two.
Had observed from close examination of everyday experience that, under certain circumstances, the mere idea of a muscular movement could be sufficient to produce a reflexive, or automatic, contraction or movement of the muscles involved, albeit in a very small degree. Braid extended Carpenter's theory to encompass the observation that a wide variety of bodily responses besides muscular movement can be thus affected. For example, the idea of sucking a lemon can automatically stimulate salivation, a secretory response. Braid, therefore, adopted the term ideodynamic, meaning by the power of an idea, to explain a broad range of psychophysiological, mind-body phenomena. Braid coined the term monoideodynamic to refer to the theory that hypnotism operates by concentrating attention on a single idea in order to amplify the ideodynamic reflex response. Variations of the basic ideomotor, or ideodynamic, theory of suggestion have continued to exercise considerable influence over subsequent theories of hypnosis, including those of Clark L. Hull, Hans Eysenck, and Ernest Rossi. In Victorian psychology, the word idea encompasses any mental representation, including mental imagery, memories, etc.
Right? Idea encompasses any mental representation, including mental imagery, memory, etc. Right? So now we're going into Sopranos, right? Now the Sopranos is gonna, for me, bring most of this stuff to a head, right? So we have we have the passing of information, right? It says it on both sides, passing of information, right? We have here the keystone, right? This is how you're put into hypnosis. It's at the center of the screen. Your eyes is focused on it, right? You have up here, the passing of information. Now, if you know this show specifically, you would know that it was about every time they had these little meetings in the bedroom, it was always of this outside information. But in this one, it was, I think it was Tony's uncle. He was messing with his broad, and I guess he was going down on her, right? And, in the mob and all of that, they was like, nah, you don't do that, yada. Right, but the information was passed, so Tony, right? Tony. Let me bring him up there. You see him right here, right? Right here. Pardon me. He got the camera backwards. Anyway, so you see him. He's laughing over the information that he's given. Right? He's being told that. Let me see if I can bring this down some so we can see the whole thing. Let me slide this over here, right? Okay. Let me see if I can actually make it a little bit smaller. All right. Okay. So he's laughing over this information that she got from, the other people, talking. So, the suggestion is here, right? The suggestion is here. The keystone is the focal point. This is a Masonic symbol, right? Then you got That's how the hypnotism is work. You're focused. It's at a desk. Your eyes. It's nighttime when this show was going. So then, when you look at the system today, you see the memes on, oh yeah, he eating this, putting his mouth in the ass and all type of stuff, because these were the passing of the messages, right? To train the brain. Remember, Sopranos was also about, psychology and, seeing a therapist and, these type of things, while it was going after the alpha mentality, the things that you don't do now all of a sudden became the norm. And it was based on this type of training mentally, right? And so when we look at, right, let me see, pardon me here. So when we look at this picture, this postcard, Freemasonic postcard, are you a Freemason? The Mason's wife giving away the secret. Then we also see, start right here with the T right here, right? This T, and it goes to King Solomon, Hiram, right? To Hiram, the widow's son. Right? So then we look over here, right? And you also see what? This is the arch, right? This is the keystone, and you see the hanging pendulum right there. So this was telling the people within, their organization, in out, because you see this stuff in your brain is supposed to be trained. So we look right here, right, and we see the same imagery, right? We do it like this, right? So you see the imagery here, all right? As well as there, right? We see the actions of her, taking this information and passing it on, right? And so this is Tricknology 101, right? So this is how this system works. It's a suggestion through leaders, and this influence or an attack on which you might hold there so it could influence you. So it takes what you find valuable and attacks it, right? And just to show that, yes, we can do this to you. Right, so like I said, you see the King Solomon. You see over here the wives, again, same thing as you see right here, right? So it's the same thing. It's all laid out for you and be right in your face. And if you are not aware of these things, you will fall victim to it, right? So then we go to susceptibility.
Braid made a rough distinction between different stages of hypnosis, which he termed the first and second conscious stage of hypnotism. He later replaced this with a distinction between subhypnotic, full hypnotic, and hypnotic coma stages.
Let me change.
Whereas the older depth scales tried to...
Hold on. All right. Grab this. Copy you. All right. Place you up in here. All right. So, right. Braid made a rough distinction between different stages of hypnosis, which he termed first and second conscious stage of hypnotism. Right. He later replaced this with a distinction between subhypnotic and full hypnotic and hypnotic coma stages. Right.
Braid made a rough distinction between different stages of hypnosis, which he termed the first and second conscious stage of hypnotism. He later replaced this with a distinction between subhypnotic, full hypnotic, and hypnotic coma stages. Jean-Martin Charcot made a similar distinction between stages, which he named somnambulism, lethargy, and catalepsy. However, Ambrose Auguste Liebold and Hippolyte Bernheim introduced more complex hypnotic depth scales based on a combination of behavioral, physiological, and subjective responses, some of which were due to direct suggestion and some of which were not. In the first few decades of the 20th century, these early clinical depth scales were superseded by more sophisticated hypnotic susceptibility scales based on experimental research. The most influential were the Davis, Husband and Friedlander, Sarbin scales, developed in the 1930s. Andre Weitzenhofer and Ernest R. Hilgard developed the Stanford Scale of Hypnotic Susceptibility in 1959, consisting of 12 suggestion test items following a standardized hypnotic eye fixation induction script, and this has become one of the most widely referenced research tools in the field of hypnosis. Soon after, in 1962, Ronald Shore and Emily Kuroda-Orn developed a similar group scale called the Harvard Group Scale of Hypnotic Susceptibility, HGSHS. Whereas the older depth scales tried to infer the level of hypnotic trance from supposed observable signs such as spontaneous amnesia, most subsequent scales have measured the degree of observed or self-evaluated responsiveness to specific suggestion tests such as direct suggestions of arm rigidity, catalepsy. The Stanford, Harvard, HIP, and most other susceptibility scales convert numbers into an assessment of a person's susceptibility as high, medium, or low. Approximately 80% of the population are medium, 10% are high, and 10% are low.
So, when we think about, the 5%, the Nation of Islam, all of them, it's referenced that you have the 85er, you have the 10%, and you have the 5% making up 100, which is basically just shifting out 10% of the low 10%, right? They throw in that also inside the 80% because they'll tell you within the 5% is, the 10%, right? So then you also have, this 10% who are low, right? And so you have an high, which will, even though they're a low number of 10%, they will be also influential upon the 80%. Right? Because then you have the low, and that low is those who are deemed able to spot this, like myself, but most of them would utilize this for the same purpose that is set up for, and most likely they'll be used as well, right?
There is some controversy as to whether this is distributed on a normal bell-shaped curve or whether it is bimodal with a small blip of people at the high end. Hypnotizable scores are highly stable over a person's lifetime. Research by Deirdre Barrett has found that there are two distinct types of highly susceptible subjects, which she terms fantasizers and dissociates.
Right. Now listen to this, right? He says research by Deirdre Barrett, right, has found that there are two distinct types of highly successful subject, which she termed fantasizers and disassociates. Right now, we're gonna get into, let them do it.
Fantasizers score high on absorption scales, find it easy to block out real-world stimuli without hypnosis, spend much time daydreaming, report imaginary companions as a child, and grew up with parents who encouraged imaginary play. Dissociates often have a history of childhood abuse or other trauma, learn to escape into numbness, and to forget unpleasant events. Their association to daydreaming was often going blank rather than creating vividly recalled fantasies. Both score equally high on formal scales of hypnotic susceptibility.
Right. Now I tell people, I was abused as a child. You know what I'm saying? But I was not the type of person to act like it didn't happen or I make up excuses right now. I mean, my aggression came from that because I understood the science. So my thing was just like, nah, you're not going to ever put me in a subservient, position. I'm not gonna be pushed down. So I took it, these things as more of a badge of honor for me not to ever be put in one of those situations. Right, so I'm not a daydreamer. I don't fantasize in that. Not to say that imagination didn't draw the conclusions of what I learned, right? But it did not make me unaware and make excuses and live in denial. So like you see people in, these religions and stuff like that, they're living in denial, right? And that's how they make it so easy, because it plays upon their denial factor. That so then whatever you fantasizing on or want to believe, it allows somebody else to use that against you.
Individuals with dissociative identity disorder have the highest hypnotizable of any clinical group, followed by those with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right, so it says individuals with dissociation identity disorder have the highest hypnotizable of any client group, because they been through something rough, but then they also do not want to face reality. They trying to bury it and hide it. And so these people are the easiest to manipulate. That's why I'm always happy I never lived a lie. I always accepted whatever it was. Now the people around me live a lie, and so that becomes frustrating, because you like, yo, listen, I'm telling you the truth. You want it to be something else because that's how you would handle that situation. You would handle it in a denial situation. So if I was the manipulator in the situation, I would use that information to my benefit, because I could see you living a lie. Like me, when I see people living a lie, I usually, be an asshole about it, like calling them out in my assholeish ways, you know what I mean? But other people, I try to be, understanding and try to guide them out of that. But then as I got older, I started realizing there's nothing you can do. Pardon me, I'm about to change this title again. There's nothing you can do to bring somebody out of that. They have already accepted that as their reality. All right? So now let's go down to applications. All right?
Applications. There are numerous applications for hypnosis across multiple fields of interest, including medical/psychotherapeutic uses, military uses, self-improvement, and entertainment.
All right, so
The American Medical
we seen what in entertainment. So what I'm doing is showing you in the entertainment field. I will be going into these other fields. I think we basically covered the medical, but we'll be getting more of in depth because that's gonna play a major part in their wickedness and devious actions. Like this all seems harmless, right, in a way, but when you think about mass incarceration and Scarface and these type of things, you already see dubious uses of this, right?
The American Medical Association currently has no official stance on the medical use of hypnosis.
Right, because as far as putting somebody in a trance or trying to convince them, like imagine opening somebody up, right, while they awake and convincing them they don't feel none of this, and it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? So in the medical field, it's like, yeah, but yet and still it's acknowledged, through the medical field, because this is all used in conjunction with each other to manipulate the masses.
Hypnosis has been used as a supplemental approach to cognitive behavioral therapy since as early as 1949. Hypnosis was defined in relation to classical conditioning, where the words of the therapist were the stimuli, and the hypnosis would be the conditioned response. Some traditional cognitive behavioral therapy methods were based in classical conditioning. It would include inducing a relaxed state and introducing a feared stimulus. One way of inducing the relaxed state was through hypnosis. Hypnotism has also been used in forensics, sports, education, physical therapy, and rehabilitation. Hypnotism has also been employed by artists for creative purposes, most notably the Surrealist Circle of Andre Breton, who employed hypnosis, automatic writing, and sketches for creative purposes. Hypnotic methods have been used to re-experience drug states and mystical experiences. Self-hypnosis is popularly used to quit smoking, alleviate stress and anxiety, promote weight loss, and induce sleep hypnosis. Stage hypnosis can persuade people to perform unusual public feats. Some people have drawn analogies between certain aspects of hypnotism and areas such as crowd psychology, religious hysteria, and ritual trances in preliterate tribal cultures.
So, we're at the end, right? As it says, some have drawn analogies between certain aspects of hypnotism, right? My thing is crowd psychology, religious hysteria, right? Ritual trances and pre-literary tribal cultures. When we understand how they have been using this system to shift the people while studying you doing it. They are studying you while they are performing this to see to what extent they can keep manipulating you. So the TV shows you watch, instead of watching them, you should study them. The music that you listen to, instead of listening, you should study the words that's being used on you. If you did those two in conjunction with each other, you would see the suggestion. And if you are able to see the suggestion, you are able to combat it. So I end this one with a peace, but more resistance than anything, right? Get your mind right. Stay sharp, people. Stay sharp.